So how do you come up with a cool name for your YouTube channel? In this video, I'm gonna be sharing some of my favorite tools, tips, and some of the biggest mistakes that I see people making so that you can come up with an awesome name for your channel. Coming up. Hey, what's up guys? Sean here with Think Media, bringing you the best tips and tools for building your influence with online video. And on this channel, we do a lot of tech gear reviews as well as tips and strategy videos just like this one. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. And hey, check out show notes and links in the description at any time during this video. There's a lot of cool resources for coming up with a name for your channel. So check those out at any time. Let's jump into the video. So coming up with a cool and memorable name for your brand is super important, and I actually wish I had a lot of the information I'm gonna be sharing in this video years ago when I started on YouTube, and I also wish that I thought a little bit bigger, because I know this video is about coming up with a YouTube name, but I really encourage you to be thinking about your brand name, thinking about a website, your social media, the overall brand that you wanna build online, and not just your YouTube channel. And so this video is gonna be broken into 3 steps. The first one is how to come up with a name. The second one is some of my favorite tools, and then the third step is gonna be all about some of the mistakes that I think everybody should avoid when trying to come up with a solid name or even rebrand their channel. So let's jump into it. So how do you actually come up with a name for your YouTube channel? Well, probably one of the easiest ways is actually to just use your first and last name. If you're stuck, this is actually a really good way to go, especially if you're building a personal brand. You know, I do a lot of work in the entrepreneur space, and when I think about that space, I think about people like Tony Robbins, Chalene Johnson, Gary Vaynerchuk, Marie Forleo, or whoever, right? Those brand names, Lewis Howes, their YouTube channels are just their first and their last name. And what's nice about that is that as you grow and progress, you're really just building real estate around your name and not necessarily around a brand name that could change when you change maybe even what your niche or what your topic is, or as you evolve. So that's probably one of the easiest ways to pick out a name, is just your first and last name. The second option, of course, is coming up with like an actual brand or creative name of some sort. And so here's a few tips if this is the direction that you're going. One, I think it's very powerful if you include the topic of your YouTube channel in the name. Meaning, is the name actually relevant to your content? So some of my favorite brand names out there, one of them is Nerd Fitness. And what I love about that name is it's a brand name and it's a fitness brand that's helping not just learn fitness tips, but specifically for a specific group of people. So you have the topic and you also have really the niche, gamers, nerds, you know, cosplay, whatever. Nerd Fitness, super solid name. Another one is say like Epic Mealtime, and that's a very popular channel on YouTube. It's a normal cooking channel and you add the epic on top of it, and if you've ever seen the channel, it's a lot of outrageous, like 10,000 calorie meals, a lot of just epicness to what they're doing. So again, a solid name. And so if you were thinking about this, let's say you had like a real estate brand, you were doing a YouTube channel with real estate tips, you could do something like Rocking Real Estate, you know, or whatever it is, and you've got kind of the actual topic included in a creative, sticky, and memorable name. Another variation of this would be to do a hybrid name. And so that's where you do your topic and then your name. So for instance, let's say you were doing After Effects with Austin and the channel was all about After Effects tips, or maybe Beauty with Brittany, you know, and you're also seeing that kind of rhyming in the same first letter, but just, you could try some things like that. Like, what is your topic? And then what is maybe your first name or a nickname of some sort? And so that's another option. And then one of the things that you would want to think about here is, again, make it memorable and make it sticky. And so ways to do that would be like Fierce Fitness, and that rhyming as well as the first few letters there kind of makes it memorable. One of my favorite YouTube channels is called Charisma on Command, and I think that's a great name. It's very sticky. The channel is all about, you know, how to build your charisma, be more effective in social situations, even be better on camera, all those types of things. But a really solid name that is memorable and that is also sticky. And then the last tip on picking out your name is model the masters. And that's actually a good name, but what I mean by that is actually look at some of the channels you look up to, look at some of your favorite online brands, and look at how they name their stuff, and then maybe just use it as a framework or a formula. So if you like that charisma on command vibe, what words could you plug in there for your name that's your topic, as well as maybe an adjective or something that has some energy to it for the name. So we talked about in step 1 is kind of how to pick out your name in different name formats. Step 2 is adding some tools to the mix. And so some of my favorite tools are, one, simply thesaurus.com. You know, when you're looking maybe for an adjective, if you're going that kind of brand name direction, that is a great way to think about what you want to convey. Maybe it's, you know, motivational, or maybe it's fierce, you know, fitness, but you like somebody has that, so you're trying to type in fierce and see other variations of that. I think a thesaurus is a great tool. And then another set of tools is, I'll link up in the description below, but are some websites like Bust a Name or Nameboy or Name Mesh. And these are actually sites that help you pick out a domain name. It actually lets you know what's available, but they also give you some creative combos. And so it says enter 2 words, and it gives you some variations. It'll even mix up some of the adjectives, and it'll also let you know, which we'll talk about in a second, if the actual .com or any domain is available, which I think is important. I think that if you're watching this channel, you're part of the Think Media TV community, that I really want you to be thinking bigger than just YouTube. Be thinking about building an actual brand, building really even a business, like you're an entrepreneur. Be thinking outside of the box and be thinking about your brand overall, not just on YouTube. So definitely check out that list of resources and go through those websites. And I bet that if you spend, you know, 10 or 30 minutes like entering some different words into those websites, you're gonna discover a lot of cool ideas for coming up with a cool name. And then the final step here, number 3, I wanna talk about is some of the biggest mistakes that I see people making when it comes to picking out a name. And I think you should run your name through this framework first to really avoid, you know, pitfalls later on. And so the first one is not checking to see who online is maybe already using that name. And I don't just mean because of copyright. I just mean that if you, for instance, thought, you know, maybe you're not watching this channel, and obviously you are watching this channel, but if you never knew about this channel and you're like, Think Media would be a cool name, type it into Google, type it into YouTube, you're gonna see that a lot of market share, a lot of ranked videos are taken around that name, right? So you might wanna keep looking. Same thing on maybe your personal brand. You can't help if you have the exact same name as somebody else and they're really established online, but you could think about a way to position yourself by maybe adding another word, like After Effects with Austin, as opposed to maybe some person named Austin that is like ranking everywhere, by kind of niching things down. So the first mistake is just not doing the research to see if anybody else has the name. And then secondly, the big mistake that I see is not checking to see if your name is available on social media. So for instance, when we were starting Video Influencers, Benji and I, a few years ago, one of the things that we did was we researched to see if the name was used by anybody else. Then we actually went around to see are the social media accounts taken? And what we mean is like the actual URL. So like Instagram.com/video influencers. We got Facebook, we got YouTube, we got Instagram, we got Twitter with no S because we max out the characters with just video influencer. So this is, I think, a great thing to do when you're just starting out, and even if you want to expand onto other social media platforms, to look to see if maybe a brand name or a rebrand is available. Now, don't get stuck here, because there's plenty of people that are crushing it at world-class levels that have a different Instagram name than their YouTube channel, than their Facebook page. But it is really nice if you can have unity across those brands. And so just put it on kind of your to-do list to run through your process of coming up with a name. And a cool resource that I wrote down here is namecheck.com. That's namechk.com, which is actually a place where you can type in all the characters of your name and it'll tell you what platforms it's taken on. So like when I type in video influencer, you start seeing the platform say, oh, it's taken here, 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 and here. And it lets you, rather than going from platform to check, it lets you do it all in one place. So that's a great resource, and I'll link that up in the description as well. Mistake number 3 I see people making is not seeing if the domain is available, the URL, because even if you don't want to start a website now, it's really great to get the domain. And you can also always just redirect that domain to your YouTube channel between now and maybe whenever you might want to start a YouTube channel. So the other thing about this is I really still believe that even though there's all these other URLs out there, .net, whatever, now it's like .life, .vegas, there's like all these URLs. I still think that .com is the most powerful, especially if you want to build a world-class brand. Now, the disclaimer is, again, don't get stuck here. For video influencers, we can't even find the .com person. We offered him money, he's just not responding. Somebody bought the .com and just sits on it and they're not using it. But we got .net. And so again, run your names through these filters, but don't necessarily let it make or break the name. So we just said, fine, we'll go with .net. And it's not like it's a huge problem. But ideally, if you can get the .com, if you can get the social media, if nobody else has it, you're on a great trajectory for finding an awesome name. Mistake number 4 is using numbers in your name. And so I like to say avoid this, rather than just using like Sean Cannell, it'd be like Sean Cannell 65 or Sean Cannell 11 or whatever. And usually why this is a problem is, number 1, if you say it verbally on like a live or on a podcast or with somebody, they might not know if it's typed out. They might not know if it's actually spelled out, the numbers versus the actual word. And it also can just not, potentially not be very professional, right? And a lot of times back in the day, I remember when email started, that's how old school I am. I remember, it'd be like, oh shoot, my email address is not available on Hotmail. So instead of doing Sean Cannell at hotmail.com, it'd be like Sean Cannell 21564, or just like your favorite lucky number, like the year of your first car. And all that's cool. But again, it kind of has that vibe, right? It's not necessarily super professional. So if possible, unless there's a very strategic and intentional reason, maybe like it actually is on brand and there is a reason for doing it, well then absolutely do it. But typically I'd recommend avoiding numbers in your name. Mistake number 5 is if the name is hard to spell. Because think about this, we live in a world where you really want to think about the practicality of sharing that name and someone trying to remember it and then maybe type it in on social media later or figure out what it is later. And so I think that sometimes you can't avoid this. For instance, my name is Sean Cannell and nobody knows how to spell Cannell and nobody knows how to say Cannell. And so it is kind of hard to communicate. So even if I'm on a podcast and I'm being interviewed, I will actually say, you can follow me on Twitter at Sean Cannell, that's SeanCannell. I'll actually spell it out because I'm thinking about that. So that's kind of a strategy as well. You can't ultimately change your name if it is kind of confusing, but never forget that you can't just assume people know how to spell your name. And sometimes even when you're typing in an Instagram, you're like, what was it again? What were the first few letters? So always be thinking about how can you make things as simple, as clear, as memorable, as easily communicatable. If you're gonna be on Facebook Live or YouTube Live and you say something verbally, can it be remembered? And is it gonna be complex to spell? Especially when picking out YouTube names, domains, URLs. Keep it simple and make it very, very easy to spell. And one way around this is kind of cool is Gary Vaynerchuk, try to spell Vaynerchuk, right? He on social media actually is Gary V-E-E. So he shortened his name, Gary V, and he then will say that. So you can follow me everywhere like Gary V-E-E. He spells it out, right? So that's kind of a hack to be thinking from the beginning, how can I make this very shareable and memorable and simple for years to come? And then lastly, one of the big mistakes that I see people making online is having an inconsistent name across the internet. And so what I mean is maybe their YouTube channel is named one thing, and then their Twitter is different, and their Facebook is different. I don't even just mean the URL, I just mean their actual branding. And so be thinking about not just coming out with a solid name that hopefully includes your topic and has a strong message to it, it's memorable, it's simple, but then also be thinking about then making sure that that messaging is consistent across all of your channels. So even if you already have a name, that might be some good spring cleaning, if you will, to really think, is my name, my brand messaging consistent across all platforms online? Question of the day, what are your tips for coming up with a cool and memorable name for YouTube or just for your brand online? Post those in the comment section below, and remember that some of the best tips and feedback come from you, the Think Media TV community, so definitely connect with everybody in the comment section. So thanks so much for checking out this video. Hit the like button if you thought it was valuable, and once you pick out your YouTube name, the next step is to figure out how to get views, subscribers, and how to really build your influence online. So if you actually want to check out a free training I did, I'll link it up on the screen screen here as well as in the description below. Until next time, Think Media TV is bringing you the best tips and tools for building your influence with online video. Keep crushing it, and we will talk soon.